Hey there, hope you're having a wonderful day. So in this video, we're going to create a popular game. Well, it's popular for now. It's been on the news actually, and a lot of people seem to know about it, and that is Wordle. And so I think this is a good game for beginners who are learning web development. So basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So in this video, we're going to create this game from scratch using just HTML, CSS, JavaScript, no libraries, no frameworks, nothing. If you've never played this before, you can just go on this website. And basically, it's a daily game that takes like 2 minutes, and there's a new word each day. You have 6 attempts to guess what that new word is. Every time you guess a word, if you don't get it right, you're given some hints. You can see that the first guess I put in was apple, and there are some gray tiles and yellow tiles. Yellow tiles mean that the letter exists in the word, but it's not in the correct position. So there's a P and E in here. So my second guess is press, and you can see there's a green tile. This means that the first letter is a P, so that's correct. And there's an R and E that I did not guess the correct position of. And then you can keep guessing. And so if I guess print, I press enter and it will submit my guess. And you can see that wasn't the right guess. I can put penny. I can also backspace, right? So I'm given 6 tries, and after 6 tries, if I don't guess it, they will tell me what the word is. Okay. So we're going to create this game, and to do that, you want to have an editor. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm just going to call it Wordle.html. Did it create it here? No? Okay, I'll do it here. Wordle.html. And then I'm going to create another one, Wordle.css and Wordle.js. Okay, so we have these 3 files, and basically HTML is all the content on this page. So it's the title, it's this little horizontal line, these icons, the tiles, the letters. So that's HTML. CSS is basically your styling. So adding colors. So adding this yellow tile, this green tile, this gray one, adding the borders here, this keyboard. We're not going to add the keyboard or these little icons because it's a little too complicated. For now, we're just going to focus on the actual game itself, where you're guessing the word and being able to process user input. And then finally, we have JavaScript. So JavaScript is used to modify elements on the web page. So JavaScript allows us to type in, a guess, and then we can submit the guess. So if I press enter, a pop-up appears. That's JavaScript, and it will compare your guess with the word that they have. So that's pretty much it. Your HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, so after I created my files, I can just open up the HTML one in my web browser. So I just double click on this over here, and you can see this is my blank HTML file. Now let's start working on this. So first we have HTML. I'm assuming you know a little of the basics. If not, that's okay. I'll try to make it as beginner friendly as possible and try to explain as much as I can. So first we have head and we have the body. Okay, so head is basically this tiny stuff. So it's your title, right? So in this case, it just has the file name. We can change it. We'll make the title Wordle, and then we're gonna add little some other stuff. So meta char set is going to be UTF-8, and it's just standard character set. So we're gonna also have meta name equals viewport. And this will be content width equals device width. Initial scale equals 0. User scalable, no. Okay. So what this basically does is it scales your web page so that it doesn't look weird in other devices. So whether using your phone or an iPad or your computer, it will scale it so that, it will look nice. And we also want to link our CSS and JavaScript files. So basically just link. And then this is style sheet. And our href is going to be Wordle.css. And then our JavaScript script source is going to be Wordle.js, and then we close that tag. Okay, so that's it for head, and now we have body. So for our body, let's add the title, and we're gonna just put Wordle. And then if I save this and refresh it, you can see Wordle. And we're gonna style it, center it, change the font. Let's go back here, and I'm going to add that line. That line is basically HR. It's just that little thin line. And I'm also going to add a break line. So what this basically does is it just adds a new line, just pushes things down a little. So it will create this white space between this line and this board. All right, so let's go back here, and I'm going to create the board. So div, and I'm going to set it an ID board. And I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to add one more BR. And then in case the user or the player does not guess correctly, we want to show them the answer, right? So I'm going to have another header, and I'm going to set the ID to answer. And I'm not going to put in anything. We're going to populate this later if the user does not get the correct answer. And for here, I'm just going to make the ID title. So the IDs are used for styling and for accessing the element in JavaScript. Okay, and it's different from a class in that ID it's unique. So when I try to get an element with title, it's always going to be this tag. And yeah, all right, so that's HTML. Now we have our line and our title. All right, so this looks pretty ugly, so I'm going to style it. All right, so first let's style our body. So this is everything within our web page. Whatever we put as a style here would apply to all the tags in the body. So basically everything inside here. So I'm just going to change the font. Oops. And the font is Arial, Helvetica, Sans Serif, and text align. We're going to center it. Okay. And basically you just copy and paste the title, Wordle from the website, and then put on Microsoft Word or Google Docs, and you can see it's Arial. Okay, so let's go back and let's also shorten that line. So this HR line is very long, but we want it to be about this length. So we're just going to make the width 500 pixels. And then title. So to access the ID that you want to style, you use this hash. And for classes, use the dot. So I'm going to use hash title, and I'm going to make the font size. So the font size we saw in Microsoft Word, it was 27, but this is not the correct unit, I guess, of measurement. So in Microsoft Word, they use PT. We want pixels. So we put in 27, convert, and we get 36. So we're going to change this to 36 pixels, and we're going to make it bold. So font weight bold, letter spacing, and make it 2px or 2 pixels. So letter spacing basically adds spacing between the letters so they're not scrunched up together. All right. And then let's have our board. So for now, you won't be able to see the board because we didn't really populate it yet, but I'll add the colors. So I'm going to set the width to 350 px, height to 420, and I'm going to set the background color. Let's make it green for now. And if I go back and refresh this, you can see I have my board here. This is where we'll put our tiles, and we have our nicely centered title and shortened line here. So now let's center the board. So I'm going to do margin 0 auto, margin top. I'm going to push the board down a little bit by 3 pixels, and then display flex and flex wrap. All right, so display flex, what this does is, if we go back here, if you notice we have this board, which is 5x6 or 6x5, and what that flex is going to do is going to keep our tile elements within that board, okay, within that box. So for tile, we're going to have a tile class that we're going to create, I guess, 30 of. So we're going to have .tile, right, because it's a class, and we're going to make the, well, let's start with the box. So the border, right, so each box starts with a border, this gray border. So I'm just going to add that. It's going to be 2px, 2 pixels, solid, and let's make it light gray. And then I'm going to make the width 60 pixels and the height 60 pixels. And we want some space in between the boxes, so we're going to use margin. And let's set the space between each box by 2.5 pixels, but because it applies to each tile, it's going to be 2.5 pixels away from one tile, and next to that tile is going to be another 2.5 pixels away. So in total, it is going to be 5 pixels in between two tiles. And then now, let's add some styling for the text. So we want to style the text, and we want to center it, change the font. So let's do that. So let's do text, and I'm going to make the color black to begin with, and font size will be the same as the title, 36 pixels. Font weight will be bold, and then display flex, again, keep in the box, and justify content, center, and align items center. So justify would center it, I think, horizontally or vertically. I forgot which one, but you need both of them. So one of them centers it horizontally and the other centers it vertically. All right, so we got that down. And then now we have 3 more things to add, and that is changing the color based on the hints, right? So we have correct, we have present, and then we have absent. Okay, so for correct, we want to change the color to green. So background color. So I already went ahead and figured out which colors correspond to which hint type. So 6AA64, this should be the green. And then we're going to change the font color to white and make the border color white as well. So that since our background is white, it's just going to hide the border. If we took away the border, it's going to make the size of the tiles smaller, but we don't want to do that. We just want to hide the border. So we're going to make it white so it blends in with the background. And let's do the same for our present. So that's yellow. So background color. So it's going to be C9B458. And the color will be white. And the border color will also be white. All right, and then we have the last one, absent, and this is a dark grayish color, 787C7E. Same thing, color white, border color white. Okay, so our CSS is done. Let's go back and refresh. So you can see so far we just centered this. Now we're going to use JavaScript to populate the tiles for the player to guess. All right, so before we continue, let's talk about how we might design this. So I have paint here, and basically you have this board, right? So you have 5 columns and 6 rows. So each column represents the current position for the letters of the word that you're guessing, and the rows represent how many attempts you're allowed, right? So the columns basically represent the length of the word. So you have 5 columns and you have 6 guesses. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create 30 tiles, and we're going to give each one an ID. So in this case, because this one is at index 00, we're going to make this ID something like 0-0. And then over here, like this L, this would be 0-3. This E over here would be 1-2, and so on. So each ID will correspond to its row column indices. All right, so let's add some global variables. So we have our height, and that's going to be 6. So we said this is the number of guesses. And then we have our width. So this is going to be 5. It's going to be length of the word. And the reason I'm using variables is because you can change these however you like. You can reduce the number of guesses or add more, or you can change the length of the word. So we're just going to keep it consistent with what Wordle has and just make 6 guesses and 5 letters for the word. Okay, so we're going to have row equals 0 and column equals 0. This is the player's current guessing position. Currently, after 2 guesses, the user or the player is here, right? So the row is 2 and the column is 0. And if they guess, let's say A, the user would now be here, right? So we bump up column to 1, and then as the user keeps guessing and submits their guess, we increment row by 1. So now row is 3 and column is back to 0. Again, this is the current guess or attempt number, and current letter for that attempt. Okay. Whenever you play games, you want to have a bool for game over. So we're going to set that to false. And the word, let's just make it squid. Okay. So that's the word that they'll be guessing. You could have an array of words, something like words, and put squid or apple, and then you could, have your word be completely random. So maybe an x1 or 0, or just use math to get a random index. But I'm just going to keep it simple. We're just going to use the same word throughout this tutorial. So when our page loads, we want to call a function. So we're going to do window on load. It's pretty self-explanatory. When your page loads, call this function, and we're going to create an initialize function. So we're going to call initialize, and here we'll define initialize, and basically this will create our tiles and create some event listeners and whatnot for our game. So oops, forgot the E here. Okay, so let's create the board, which is basically your tiles, your 6 attempts. So we're going to do for r equals 0, r less than height, r plus plus, and then let c equals 0, c less than width, c plus plus, c plus plus, and we're going to create a new HTML element. So we're going to say let tile equal to document dot create element, and we're going to make a span. So it's similar to a paragraph tag, except that it doesn't end with a new line. So with span, you can put tiles next to each other instead of right below each other. Let's modify some fields. So tile.id is going to be r2 string, and we're just going to make the ID like this. So we're going to do r2 string plus the dash and c.toString. Okay. And then we're going to add the class list to the class list, the tile class, right? So what that does is it's going to add this class with all this styling. So basically, when you create an element like this, you're basically creating a span like this, and then second line adds the ID to it, so it'll be 0, 0 for the first one, and then the class will have tile. And let's make the inner text. Let's put P for now, and then finally let's do document.getElement by ID, our board, and we're going to append child. Oops. Tile. All right, so we have our inner text. It's going to put the P here. Our code is going to find the board, right, by ID, and insert this document or this HTML tag inside that div. So it's going to do this, and then it's going to create another one in the next for loop, and then another one. So you can kind of see why we use JavaScript, because we can use for loops. Otherwise, I would have to copy and paste this 30 times. So that's tedious to do. So after that, let's save and see our changes. Oh yeah, let's undo that background color. Where is it? Here. Okay. Something's wrong. Let's see what happened. Console. Tile.classlist is not a function. What happened here? Let's see. Tile.classlist.append. Oops. Or add. I think it's add. Should be add. Okay. So let's go back. Check. What happened here? ID is not a function. I think I added an S somewhere. Element by ID. Okay. There you go. Here's our tile. All right. So we have our six rows, and for each row we have 5 letters that the user can guess. And as you can see, that everything is nice and centered. So let me show you what happens if we did not have some parts of our styling. So for instance, in our board, if I did not have this display flex to keep the tiles within the box, the board box, let's see, and it will be like this, a single column of 30 tiles. And in our tiles, if I did not have justify content center, you can see P is centered vertically, but not horizontally. So it's over here when it should be a little to the right. And if I commented out align items, you can see that it is centered horizontally, but not vertically. So we need both of them so that it centers horizontally and vertically. Okay, so let's go back to our code and let's make this an empty string. So there you go. Now let's add our logic. So we're going to process user input. So listen for key press, and we have document.get or add event listener key up. So we're using key up. Basically, when you're typing into Wordle, when you put your finger down on A, we want to wait till the player lifts their finger up. And that's when we register the key that they pressed. Because if we did key down, then the user can just hold down the key and then put in 5 A's without lifting up a finger. So that's why we use key up. We're going to use an arrow function here. Oops. And if you don't know what an arrow function is, it's basically, this is the parameter, E, which is the key event, and you have this arrow, which is what's called an arrow function, and then you have your curly braces, and in here you put everything you want in your function. So first things first, if game over, basically if it's game over, you just return, right? So this is going to make the page constantly listen for key presses. And so the user can just type in keys. You don't want that to happen after they used up all of their guesses, or if they, got the word correctly, you shouldn't process the inputs anymore, right? So that would be game over. So why don't I show you by using alert. I'll do alert e.code. This will tell us what key was pressed, right? So e.code. So if I refresh this, you see F5 was pressed. If I type in A, you can see key A was pressed. If I put backspace, enter, P, K. So that's how you can figure out what key was pressed. So let's comment that out. All right, so first we only allow certain keys to be pressed. So A to Z, the backspace, and enter. Nothing else is allowed. So to check to see if the user pressed an alphabet key, we will use an if statement, and we'll say key A. As you saw before, when I pressed A, the code was key A. Not A, but key A. So key A less than or equal to e.code, and e.code is less than or equal to key Z. So this less than or equal to, this comparison is, you're basically comparing the dictionary order, right? So if I put in, if I press a 1 or 2 or backspace, they're not within the range of key A and key Z in, lexical order. Within here, I would check if column, or the column that the user is currently inputting a letter into, we need to check to see if it's less than 5, right? Because the indices go from 0 to 4. So if they are on, let's say, this column, then that is less than the width, which is 5, right? So if they're on this column, they can still guess this one, and then after they guess this one, we increment them to be on column 5, which is just temporary to say that, you've input all 5 characters, you can press enter now. If they don't put in all 5 characters, putting enter does nothing. All right, so if column is less than the width, we're going to check again to make sure that the character at that tile is blank, so that they're just going on to the next one, or they're pressing enter, but they're not overwriting it. So current tile, or actually let's get the current tile first. So let current tile, because we document.get element by ID, and it's going to be let's see, row.toString plus the dash plus call.toString. And then if cur_tile.innerText is an empty string, so it hasn't been filled, we're going to update it. So cur_tile.innerText is going to be e.code, and we're going to take index 3, right? Because it returns 4-character string, key A, key B, key C. We just want the letter. So we don't want the word key, we just want the letter. And then we're going to increment column by 1. Okay, so let's save and let's go back. Now I can type some stuff in, apple, and that's it, right? I'm stuck at 5. I can't type anymore. I can press enter, and it should, give me the results, but we haven't implemented that. Now, if the key press was not a letter key, maybe it's backspace. So we'll do else if e.code is equal to backspace. In this case, it's pretty straightforward. If 0 call and width. So if the column that the user is currently on is between 1 and the width 5, then they can press back. So 0 does not count, because if you're on 0, that means you haven't started adding letters for that row. You can only go back if you are within this area, right? So if you put in like C, D, E, F, G, then currently you're on a column 5, which is not a valid index. Then you can backspace and go back here, backspace, 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 backspace. And when you're on 0, you can't backspace because there's nothing to backspace to. Okay, so over here, we're going to say if backspace was pressed, we're going to do call minus equal 1. And then we're going to get the tile, right? Because we did minus equal 1, we need to get that updated ID. So we're going to copy this code, and we're going to set it to set the inner text to a blank string. Okay, so let's go back and try it out. So I'm going to say app, I can backspace, 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 and that's it. I can do apple, backspace, backspace. Okay, so that's nice. Now we just need to hit enter and have the game tell me some hints, or tell me whether I got the word or not. So what we're going to do is else if e.code is equal to enter. We're going to call an update function that will, oh, what is that? Nope. We're going to call an update function. No, come on. update function, and we're going to increment the row by 1, right? So basically you use up your attempt for this one, go on to the next attempt, and set the column to 0. Start new row, start at 0 for new row. And then, so before I write my update function, I also want to do one more check here, and that is if not game over and row is equal to height, that basically means you used up all your attempts. If the row is equal to height, that means you used up all 6 attempts. We're going to say game over is equal to true. And then we're going to reveal the answer in here. So we're going to populate this. Okay, so document.getElement by ID answer. And we're going to set the inner text to Word. Okay, let's write our update function. So in our update function, we want to count the number of letters we get correct. So we're going to set that to 0. So first we're going to iterate through the letters of the word that the player guessed. So for let c equals 0, c is less than with, c++. We're going to get that tile. So it's this. So let's just copy and paste this. And we're going to say letter is going to be cur tile dot inner text. And then, so if the letter, or actually let's phrase it as a question, is it in the correct position? So if word at index C is equal to the letter, then we're going to say tile.class list.add correct. So it's going to apply that styling with the green background, and we're going to increment correct by 1. Now, if it's not in the correct position, we'll ask, is it in the word then? So else if word.includes letter, and then we're going to say tile.class list.add present. And then finally, not in the word, so we're just going to say else tile.class list.add absent. Okay. And finally, we also want to update game over in case the user happens to guess it before this condition, where row equals height, before they use up all their attempts. So another way for game over to happen is when they guess it correctly. So if correct is equal to the width, then game over is true. All right, and I think that's it for the implementation. If we refresh, we can put apple. Okay, so there's a bug somewhere. Let's see, inspect. Cannot read inner text. So line 74 of Wordle, current tile.inner text. This should be, instead of column or col, it should be C. All right, so let's change that to C, and let's see if that worked. So let's refresh, and if I put in apple, oh, I guess didn't work. Let's see what happened here. Tile is not defined. Yeah, you gotta be careful with these namings. You gotta be careful with the variable names. So set tile, we're gonna put cur tile and cur tile here. Okay, so that should be it. Let's refresh. I'm gonna put apple. You can see there are no letters in apple that appear in squid, so I'm gonna put tower, none. Okay, queen. We have 2, QU. So Q and U exist in the word, but they're not in the right position. So let's try squat, and you can see SQ and U are in the right position. So we can also write, let's just solve it, squid. Okay, so that's pretty much Wordle, and I can put in other words too. Actually, I didn't do a check to make sure that it's a valid word. So maybe that's a feature that you can implement. So I can just do this, just random. And you can see squid is revealed to me at the end. Okay, so some things you can do to improve is add a database of words. You can make a long array of words. You can also add that keyword from Wordle if you want. There's also one more thing, and that is the highlighting issue. So if I put in 5 S's, in Wordle, only one of the S's should be highlighted because only one exists in the word squid. But this implies somehow that there are 5 S's, which, so this is something that maybe you might want to fix. And yeah, that's it for this tutorial. And if you found this tutorial helpful and you learned a lot, please leave a like. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I'll take a look. And if you decide to take this code and continue working on this clone of Wordle, please do let me know. I would like to see it. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this tutorial. And I hope you have a good one. Bye bye.